Rule 629. Leaving the player's bench or penalty bench. A. A major plus a game misconduct penalty shall be assessed to any player who leaves the player's bench or the penalty bench during an altercation or for the purpose of starting an altercation. These penalties are in addition to any other penalties that may be assessed during the incident. Substitutions made prior to the altercation shall not be penalized under this rule, provided the players so substituting do not enter the altercation. For purpose of this rule, an altercation is considered to be concluded when the referee enters the referee's crease or, in the absence of penalties, signals a face-off location. B. No penalized player may leave the penalty bench except on the expiration of their penalty or at the end of a period. A minor penalty shall be assessed to any player who leaves the penalty bench before the penalty has expired unless it resulted from an error by the penalty timekeeper. In all situations, the player shall serve the remaining penalty time. If a penalty timekeeper error occurred, no additional minor penalty assessed. Note: in all cases where a penalized player has left the penalty bench prematurely, whether the result of penalty timekeeper error or not, the penalty timekeeper shall note the time and verbally alert the officials, who shall stop play when the offending team gains possession of the puck. C. If a player illegally enters the game either from the player's bench or penalty bench, timekeeper error or not, any goal that is scored by the offending team while they are illegally on the ice shall be disallowed. However, all penalties assessed to either team shall be served in the normal manner. A penalty shot / optional minor penalty shall be awarded to the non-offending team anytime a player who is on a breakaway, see glossary, is interfered with in any manner by an opposing player who has illegally entered the game. D. A bench minor penalty to the team or a game misconduct penalty to the team official, or both, shall be assessed when any team official enters the ice surface after the start of the period and prior to its end without the permission of the referee. Note: any incident involving a team official entering the ice surface without permission during the course of a game shall be reported to the proper authorities for further disciplinary action. E. Play shall be stopped and the face-off conducted at the last play face-off location any time a team starts play with fewer players than entitled to, and the additional entering player is the first to play any puck coming from their defending zone, unless they have first made skate contact with their defending zone. Situation 1. A player from each team is serving a coincident penalty. Their penalties expire, but they must wait for a stoppage of play before leaving the penalty bench. Play is stopped because of an altercation. No players leave their players' benches. However, both players leave the penalty bench at the same time. Player A, red team, enters the altercation. Player X, blue team, does not enter the altercation but skates to their player's bench. What penalties are imposed? Each player would be assessed a major plus game misconduct penalty. The player entering the altercation would also be assessed whatever additional penalties they incur. Rule reference 629A. No player may leave the players or penalty bench at any time during an altercation. Situation 2. Player A1 leaves the player's bench during a fight. They are the first player to leave a bench. They initiate a fight with an opposing player. What penalties would be assessed to A1? Player A1, who leaves the bench, would be assessed a major plus game misconduct penalty for leaving the bench during an altercation, plus an additional major plus game misconduct penalty for the fight. Rule references 629A and 615A. All penalties are cumulative. Player A1 must receive 2 game misconduct penalties. The major plus game misconduct penalty is assessed to any player leaving the bench during an altercation, not just the first player to do so. Situation 3. A player is the first to leave their player's bench during an altercation and is also the first player to intervene in an altercation then in progress. What penalties are assessed to this player? The player is assessed a major plus game misconduct penalty for leaving the bench during an altercation and an additional game misconduct for being first to intervene in an existing altercation. Rule references 629A and 615D. The referee should assess both game misconduct penalties along with any other penalties incurred. Situation 4. A player leaves the penalty bench before their penalty has expired during a stoppage of play and during an altercation. They are the only player to leave a bench. What penalties must be assessed to this player? a major plus game misconduct penalty for leaving the bench during an altercation, plus an additional minor penalty for leaving the penalty bench prior to penalty expiration. Rule references 629A and B. The additional minor penalty applies only if the player leaves the penalty bench prematurely by their own decision. Situation 5. A player serving a misconduct penalty proceeds onto the ice during a stoppage of play before their penalty has expired, no timekeeper error, and no altercation in progress. They are assessed a minor penalty. How is this penalty served? The penalized player's team must put an additional player on the penalty bench immediately to serve the minor penalty. The remaining time of the misconduct penalty is then delayed until the minor penalty is terminated. Rule references 629B and 404A. The referee must be sure that the timekeeper knows exactly how much time is remaining in the misconduct penalty. The penalty timekeeper must also be aware that the misconduct would be resumed upon the expiration of the minor penalty. Situation 6. With 5 seconds remaining in their penalty, a player leaves the penalty bench through an error of the timekeeper and joins play on the ice. 10 seconds elapse before the timekeeper can alert the referee to stop play. Is the player assessed any further penalties? No. Rule reference 629B. The player must return to the penalty bench to serve the remaining 5 seconds of their penalty. Had the player left the penalty bench prematurely on their own accord, they would have been properly assessed an additional minor penalty. Situation 7. What penalty is assessed if a penalized player enters the game illegally by reason of the timekeeper's error and clearly checks a player who is on a breakaway and has a scoring opportunity? No penalty is assessed, but the penalized player must return to the penalty bench to serve their unexpired time starting from the time they left the penalty bench. Rule references 629B and C. Because the penalized player left the bench due to the penalty timekeeper's error, that player cannot be further penalized for leaving the penalty bench prematurely. Situation 8. What penalty would be assessed a penalized player who leaves the penalty bench on their own before their time is up and checks a player who has a breakaway? The referee shall assess a penalty shot, optional minor, and assess the penalized player an additional minor penalty to be served after their original time has expired. Rule references 629B and C. In this situation, a penalty shot would be awarded regardless of the location of the player on the breakaway. Situation 9. A player returns to the ice from the penalty bench prematurely. There were 10 seconds remaining in their minor penalty. Play continues for 20 seconds, at which time their team scores a goal. The referee is made aware of that situation as they go to report the goal to the scorer. What action must the referee take? The goal must be disallowed, and the penalized player must return to the penalty bench to serve the remaining 10 seconds in their penalty. If they return to the ice by their own decision, an additional minor penalty must be assessed. Rule references 629B and C. Once the player comes onto the ice prematurely, whether by their own decision or by instruction from the penalty timekeeper, their team cannot score a goal while that player is on the ice prior to a stoppage of play. This ruling applies if the goal is scored or awarded while the penalty time is still in effect, as well as after it has elapsed. Situation 10. Player A1 returns to the ice prematurely. While they are on the ice, Team B inadvertently puts the puck into its own goal. Does the goal count? No. Rule reference 629C. No goal can be scored by a team who has a player on the ice who has illegally entered the game, regardless as to how the goal is scored. Situation 11. A coach goes on the ice during the game to protest an official's decision. What penalty must be assessed? A bench minor and game misconduct penalty. Rule reference 629D. The referee is given the option of imposing either or both penalties, depending on the severity of the incident. However, in all cases where a team official comes onto the ice during a period to protest a decision, both penalties must be assessed. Should the coach continue the protest and refuse to leave the ice, they shall also be subject to a match penalty under Rule Reference 601E2.